When you sign up for war, you expect the danger to come from the enemy. Gunfire, mortar attacks, hidden explosives, the constant knowledge that every patrol could be your last. What you don't expect is to find yourself terrified of something that you can't see, you can't explain, and worse, you can't fight. This is the story of Op Rock, a remote military outpost in Helmand Province in Afghanistan, where British and American troops reported strange lights, unexplained voices, and encounters some claim to be paranormal. So what was waiting for them on Op Rock? I'm Alex.
And I'm Curtis.
And welcome to Well Now I'm Curious. Now, you have no idea what this is, do you?
Not got the foggiest.
So I genuinely would like to hear your thoughts on it. Before we get into the strange events that made this place infamous, I'd like to point out that Observation Point Rock, known by the troops as Op Rock, was a real military position, and its unsettling reputation was being reported while troops were still serving in Afghanistan in 2009. The detailed sequence in today's podcast comes largely from the later testimony of US Marines featured in the TV programme Paranormal Witness. Because of the isolation and harsh living conditions, soldiers were rotated through the outpost in small teams, typically spending weeks or sometimes months at a time before being relieved by the next team. The exact length of time of each rotation differed depending on the team. One of the best known accounts that I have delved into for today's episode involves a squad of 8 US Marines led by Sergeant Green in 2009. This team was relieving a British troop who had completed their rotation at the outpost. So they were doing the handovers because it's quite an important part of the routine, to give them information such as where the Taliban had been spotted, routes that are the safest, or where the biggest threats were, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the British troops seemed a little bit off, a little bit nervous, and they were more than ready to leave. So before the departure, the British commander introduced the Marines to a stray dog known as Ugly Betty, and he described her as an excellent sentry dog, like a guard dog.
Yes.
But as well as introducing them to Ugly Betty, he gave them an unusual warning, which was if they dug anything up, they were to put it back exactly as they found it. So the Marines took this warning as some kind of dark British military humour. They didn't think much of it. But it wasn't long before the squad began to understand what his warnings meant. Now, the first couple of days passed without incident, and with the Marines settling into a routine of standing watch, scanning the horizon, eating and sleeping when they could, everything just seemed normal until it was Lena's turn to be on night watch. He reported hearing strange sounds coming through the outpost radio. So he contacted the main base to ask whether or not anybody had tried to transmit something, but they said they hadn't. And Lena, thinking it was an issue with the radio or possibly the battery, replaced the battery and just continued about his watch. So that's the first strange thing that happens. I suppose if you are a soldier in that line of work, you probably wouldn't really think much of that at that point, would you?
Well, no, because it could be anything, couldn't it? It could be interference with enemy lines, enemy technology.
Could be.
Radio interference, you know what I mean? It could have been, at that point, it could have been anything. But, like I said, interesting thing is, when you look at Helmand Province, depending on whereabouts they were up on the Helmand River, it is close to the Afghani mountains, which is...
They were, I think this is actually in the hills side.
Because that's why they could never beat them, because they could never fight on the terrain. But with the mountains and how old the Persian Peninsula is, you don't know what's up there. You don't know. There's been records of all sorts. There's a lot of paranormal stuff. And there's also giants and all sorts of reports in these mountains. So it's quite interesting for what you're going to say. So
yeah,
I'm intrigued.
Good. A few days into the deployment, the Marines had noticed the trenches around the position weren't deep enough. Now, I don't know if you know this, you probably do, because you know more about these things than me. But this is a vital part in active combat because the trenches could be the only thing protecting them during an attack. So during the day, they worked on improving them, making them deeper and wider. And they were well underway with the task when Lena struck something metallic. He pulled it from the earth and discovered it was an old engineering stake with Russian writing stamped onto it, possibly left behind during the Soviet invasion in the 1980s.
Russia went back in again before the US and the UK did in 2001. So so basically, I know they was there at the 80s, but they also was in just before we went in as well.
Yeah.
But they left once we started to come in.
Yeah.
So but it's interesting. Like I say, you don't. Yeah, it's how deep was this?
Well, it doesn't actually say.
Well, if they were
how
building
deep,
a trench, if they're digging a trench,
so however deep a trench is, we'll have to look that up.
But they're at least. It depends, but it's got to be body height, hasn't it?
At the very least.
But it's quite interesting that though, like to find out what you're digging up, how much stuff's been buried even just in the last 20 years.
Well,
from this.
Yeah. So what they found next was a lot more disturbing than what Lena had found. Another Marine named Wilson continued to dig when part of the ground collapsed beneath his shovel. Shovel, exposing a small cavity. Corporal Smith helped him investigate it, and inside the cavity they found pottery fragments. I cannot speak.
Don't worry about it. Fragments.
Inside the cavity they found pottery fragments. Smith reached further into the cavity and pulled out a long bone which Lena recognised as a human femur. And this is when they remembered the warnings from the British commander. Wilson and Lena told Smith to put the bone back where it had been taken from. And as they dug more bones became unearthed.
There's a burial site, isn't it?
Yeah, according to Lena, it became almost impossible to dig anywhere on the outpost without uncovering human remains.
Wow.
Op Rock appeared to have been built on top of an old burial ground, which is supported by previous Marines who had also claimed to have found large quantities of human bones, and locals who've reportedly said that the area has been used as a burial site for generations, and also reports that the area was the spot of repeated violence during the Soviet-Afghan War.
Two things when you think about things like this, obviously. The position in the same places where the old tours have been, which is obviously down to their, what would you call it, their tactics and their knowledge on the terrain and the area. But the other thing as well is before you go in, they have a lot of intelligence through these countries, and there is citizens within the countries that do help and Afghani regimes and Iraqi regimes that do fight alongside the US and the UK and Russia, but they don't. Why would they not think to ask on how sacred some of these grounds are?
Yeah.
Because why would you want to erupt or disturb something that's because you're asking for trouble, aren't you?
Yeah.
A lot of people find it superstitious and a bit thingy, but something shouldn't be disturbed. You leave it to rest.
Yeah, of course.
Sorry, I went on a bit of a tangent there.
No, you're right. Now, like you've just said, whether or not these Marines had just disturbed something that day is impossible to know, but according to their account, the atmosphere on Op Rock soon began to change. One night, whilst asleep, Lena was jolted awake by a blood-curdling scream. His immediate response was that one of his fellow Marines had been attacked or dragged away by the Taliban. He grabbed his weapon and began to check the position. He found Wilson, who had also heard the scream. Another Marine believed that somebody might have become trapped in the razor wire surrounding the outpost, so they all began to search the perimeter. And there, just outside the wire, they saw movement. They raised their weapons, and Lena searched the area using his thermal imaging. He detected a heat signature of Ugly Betty. She was moving in the distance, but nothing else. There was nobody else there, and no obvious explanation for the scream. And after an extensive search, they blamed it on exhaustion and decided again to check in the daylight.
Okay.
I think, though, that this was my thought on the scream. Because, me and our eldest, we've heard awful scream, because our house is near a huge field and loads of trees.
Oh, the owl.
Yeah. Awful scream. It sounds like something unearthly. It sounds awful. In this area where they were, I did look into it, and there were red foxes, jackals, owls, all things like that. So that scream could have been another animal. However, why was there no heat signature for it?
I know. Well,
yeah, because they did see Ugly Betty's heat signature.
There's no warm blood though.
But they didn't see any. They didn't see any other.
You'd see an owl if it was warm.
That's what I'm saying. Even if it's in the sky or in a tree or anywhere,
you'd see it.
Did see it,
especially on a vast rural terrain like that.
Yeah. So it could have been one of those things, but the more likely probably being an owl, and maybe it just flew away really quickly. I don't know.
I think with this like topic that we're going into in this story, which I find very interesting, and like I said, it opens up so many different rabbit holes and so many different situations that have gone on, because not only is that region for the last 40 years been a battleground, and there's been so much destruction and massacre, like it's the Mesopotamia. So Mesopotamia is, and Sumer is one of the oldest civilizations that we know of history.
Yeah.
Like there's so much history in that Middle Eastern area which has been destroyed.
Yeah.
But like what's gone on there thousands and thousands and thousands of years, there's so much history and spiritual energy around there, I believe.
Yeah.
Like not just what they've done, what's already there that we don't know of.
Yeah, well, like, exactly.
You know, but it's like these places where they've like people don't, when they don't look into things, and they don't like when the Western world goes into these countries, like how do you know that's not like a banshee spirit that's like wailing?
Well, yeah.
From
they believed that it was like something like, because they couldn't see anything on the heat signature, they believed it's like some kind of spirit screaming.
Yeah, I believe, possibly.
I'm a little bit on the fence with it purely because I've heard that owl screaming, and our eldest heard that owl, and he ran home thinking the creeper off Jeepers Creepers were chasing it. It's terrifying.
But also,
if you've never heard it, and you're in the middle of nowhere, and you're under those stressful conditions that them soldiers are under, I can fully understand why that would frighten you.
But we do believe, because obviously most things in the world are a belief until it's factually seen and proven and experienced, but we do believe that there are spirits that can mimic and lure people in with noises of other animals or humans. So what if that banshee or spirit was using an animal cry or an owl cry or something?
Well, apparently it sounded like a person screaming.
Well, it could
but,
have, say.
But apparently there are a lot of animals that can sound like humans screaming.
This is an interesting one. So as you believe with me, water holds memories.
Yeah.
As everything is made up of water, which we are, and everything is.
Yeah.
The Helmand Province is a great base, but one of the main reasons is because it's the largest river that runs through Afghanistan, runs through the entire. It's the Helmand River. Mm. What's that water experience?
What's it carrying and what's it? Yeah.
You know, I know it's a river and flows downhill, but water recycles.
Yeah.
And water will be taken back up onto the mountain, and it'll come back down. It's a cycle. Yeah. So what if it's a memory?
Well, it could
be through a spirit, through water, or you know, it's this so complex and vast. This is so interesting.
I mean, we.
But that could be a number. But it definitely
it could be a number of things.
But I'm highly to believe that this is definitely something spiritual because of how much 100% death, believe. Destruction.
I believe it's something
spiritual.
There's
too much history around there.
But I think the scream could. I'm a bit on the fence with the scream purely because I've heard. If I'd not heard that myself, then I'd be 100% thinking spiritual. But because I have, I'm like, don't know. Anyway, the following morning, Lena and Corporal Parker checked for footprints or any other sign that somebody had been there, but they found absolutely nothing. Another Marine who was stationed on Op Rock was Zolik. Zolik had encountered something of his own. One evening, he was standing watch in the oppressive Afghan heat when he suddenly felt an intense chill sweep over him. Zolik later said that the temperature around him seemed to plummet in an instant, almost as though an icy blast had gone right through him. Then he felt something breathe against him. He turned, thinking it was another Marine standing behind him, but nobody was there. A voice then whispered directly into his ear. He couldn't understand what was being said, but claimed that it did sound Russian. Initially, Zolik tried to blame exhaustion. He was tired and overheated, and he was working in an active war zone, all of which could have affected his senses. As he was rationalising these things, he heard heavy footsteps moving across the rocks above him. He climbed up the rock, believing that Smith might have been trying to play a prank on him, and he was going to catch him in the act. But when he got there was nobody there. And this, as you can imagine, unsettled Zolik. He picked up his night scope and began to scan the area surrounding the outpost. He saw what appeared to be another soldier stood completely still with his arms rigid by his side. Zolik hesitated for a second because he needed to be certain that this wasn't one of his own men, and then he briefly lost sight of the figure, and when he looked again through his scope, it had vanished. So whatever Zolik encountered that night affected him badly enough that he requested a transfer away from the unit. His request was approved, so he wanted off Op Rock. He didn't want to be there.
Well, you can imagine, because if the listeners can imagine, obviously Helmand Province is a very the Afghani region, infrastructure-wise, apart from certain cities, it's a very rural country, like most countries. Even Scotland's very rural,
and that's supposed to be very hot. And it's part of the Appalachian Mountains. Yeah, Did you know?
I remember you saying it runs right through the Atlantic, doesn't it? Obviously, it's been
so we're not allowed to go to Scotland.
The water levels, obviously. But what was I saying then? So with Afghanistan, you can imagine there's a base, and there's nothing else around you, and you see things that pop in and out of sight. You're vulnerable, you're vulnerable because they need to be able to see, and they need to be able to be clear, obviously, for enemy attacks. But you think,
but these are trained men as well, trained for this type of thing,
yeah,
and they're
not
just
trained for spirit.
No. But I'm saying they're trained to be in stressful, high stress situations.
Oh, yeah.
But they're not just. It's not just one sense. So they're seeing things, they're hearing things, they're feeling things. All these different senses. And these are trained men, like not to be trained in the paranormal, but trained men to be under stressful situations, living and psychological.
They're mentally broken and programmed to deal with the situations that they're taught.
Yeah, exactly.
And when you get put in a situation that they're not taught, you can imagine how the programming will go a bit west.
Yeah.
Because they're mentally strong to take the modern warfare brutal reality. But whereas and everything else goes out the window.
Yeah.
But like say when something, because no one knows until you go into it. But the
you know that noise that I said when Pepe died upstairs. Did you just hear it then?
No, I was talking.
Right, sorry. Carry on. You said
as I think I was going into where I was saying that obviously no one knows what it's like to go into war until you go into it, and I can imagine it must be very mentally. It must be scary as shit.
Yeah.
You know, so even regardless of how much they're mentally broken and reprogrammed and built for that, no soldier knows what it's like until you actually go and do it.
Well, yeah.
Like the soldiers who train and don't ever go to war, and the soldiers.
No, but these were Marines, so you'd think that they would have experienced.
Well, no. Like I say, I've got friends that never went into war. That was in army for like 8 years.
Because aren't the Marines?
They were based elsewhere. When just being in that situation, no matter how much they've been trained, it will be scary. Every day will be fucking scary, you know. And obviously, some of them are just bred for it and they love it and they live and they thrive by it. And
but do you not find this
on an average
weird that as you'll find out? I'm not sure if it was exactly all 8 of them, but near enough all these soldiers on this watch all experienced the same things. Like,
well, that's how they know they weren't going insane
exactly.
as well. And that would have scared them more because of the fact that they're all experiencing the similar encounter.
Yeah. A few days after Zolik left, Corporal Lena was standing watch when Ugly Betty began to bark towards the darkness beyond the outpost. Lena knew that she had often alerted the men to movement, so he lifted his night vision goggles and followed her gaze. He could see in the distance what appeared, again, like with Zolik, appeared to be a man stood completely still. And like I say, as with Zolik, he thought it was a Taliban scout observing the position. But wanting to confirm what he'd seen, Lena grabbed the thermal imaging equipment, again, saw no heat signature.
Nothing again?
No heat signature at all.
Jesus.
Of anything human or otherwise. So he switched back to the night vision goggles. And then the figure again was completely visible, only now it had moved roughly 100 metres closer in a matter of seconds.
Bloody hellfire.
Then Lena checked the thermal imager again, and guess what? Nothing.
Nothing again. So they're becoming more. It's coming to a point where you can't explain what the.
Yeah. So
then they'll be looking at, is it aliens? You know.
Well, that was one thing that I thought. So switching between the two pieces of equipment, Lena could see the figure clearly through the night vision goggles, but there was no heat signature. There was no heat signature at all coming from whatever it was he was looking at. Lena was then distracted by a tap on the shoulder. So as he's trying to focus on this thing and switching between the two pieces of equipment, he felt a tap on the shoulder. Now, Sergeant Green had reportedly, he had a distinctive way of tapping the Marines on the shoulder when he wanted to get their attention, you know, without speaking.
Yeah.
So he felt this tap on the shoulder, and relieved, Lena turned around expecting to see him. Nobody was there. Lena was completely alone, and Ugly Betty was still barking into the darkness. And the whole experience, as you can imagine, was deeply unsettling. And Lena wasn't the last Marine to report the strange sightings or strange things happening, because during another watch, another Marine was standing with Smith when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned expecting to see Sergeant Green approaching, but there was nobody there. Then Ugly Betty began to growl. He searched the position using thermal optics, but the only heat signatures he could detect belonged to Ugly Betty and the other Marines. He asked Smith if he'd seen anything, but he hadn't. Then the crunching sound of the gravel underfoot began again. Again, there was nobody there. This Marine, like with Zolik, felt what he thought was somebody with breathing up against his face. And this encounter, like with Zolik, very unnerving.
So he actually felt a breath?
But so did Zolik.
But they actually felt something?
Felt breath against them, yeah.
Imagine if it's like Predator,
because
with
do you remember
invisible cloak on it, and it's just breathing on it.
But if you remember Zolik, he felt a breath, turned around, it wasn't anybody. And now this Marine felt it. There was nobody there. So very, very unsettling.
Very, very.
Wilson also had his own experience while manning the machine gun position on a separate night. He felt a sudden chill and heard whispers. Zolik heard whispers, if you remember, and he said they sounded Russian. So Wilson heard whispers, and he also claimed the voices to be distinctly Russian, but he said the voices were quiet to begin with and became increasingly louder. By this point, reports weren't just coming in from one or two Marines. Several of the Marines were describing cold air, footsteps, voices, breathing up against their faces, figures that had no heat signatures and vanishing within seconds, and they have all experienced an overwhelming sense that they weren't alone. Even during the day, reports of movements and feeling as though somebody was just stood behind them, but when they turned round, there was nobody there. Each one began to dread night watch. Then came the final night. Lance Corporal Diggs noticed something was wrong with the radio again. He replaced its battery twice in an attempt to rectify the issue. The batteries were brand new, and both batteries died within minutes. Now, do you remember at the start, Lena? He had the issue with the radio.
Yeah.
So Lena came over.
But he changed the batteries and whatnot. And...
Yeah. So Lena came over to have a look at the radio. He changed it a third time, the battery a third time. And reports claimed that this battery died within minutes as well. And the radio was the lifeline, because without it they had no reliable way to call up for backup if they became under attack. So Wilson took his position beside the machine gun, and he was well aware of the whispers, as most men were, and he sat in the darkness waiting for them to begin. But this time there were no whispers, and without warning, the silence exploded with the sounds of machine gun fire erupting all around him. Wilson, thinking that they were under attack, ducked down expecting the rounds of gunfire to rip through his position. Other Marines also reacted immediately. Sleeping Marines even scrambled from the sleeping positions and grabbed their rifles and sprinted to their fighting positions around the perimeter. Lena rushed to the machine gun nest, thinking that the weapon had maybe malfunctioned, or possibly that Wilson had opened fire, but the weapon hadn't fired a single round. Then came a sound that every soldier dreads. It was the unmistakable whoosh of an incoming RPG, rocket-propelled grenade.
For those who don't know.
The Marines threw themselves into cover and braced for impact while waiting for the explosion.
So they saw that?
Heard.
So they heard something like an RPG?
They heard it. Apparently, this was unmistakable to them. They've been in wars.
I'm just trying to... So they're thinking that they're under fire and the enemy's attacking them?
Yeah. So they braced themselves for impact,
wasn't?
And it never came. The gunfire continued all around the post, and believing that they were truly under attack, members of the squad moved through defensive positions, checking every possible route that an enemy fighter could have used to get inside. They searched with their weapons, raised expecting to come face to face with a Taliban member at any second. But every trench was empty, all positions were clear, and there was nobody there.
Sounds like the spirits are mentally torturing these guys.
Yeah, and still Wilson could hear gunfire, so close that he later described it as though somebody was holding a weapon beside his ear and repeatedly pulling the trigger.
Psychological warfare.
Then, As suddenly as it started, everything stopped. The gunfire didn't fade, it just instantly went dead. It just went dead silent. Multiple members of the squad reacted as though Op Rock was under attack. They all heard the gunfire, they all heard what they thought to be an RPG, but there was absolutely no physical evidence at all that an attack had taken place. The Marines were left standing at the outpost, armed and ready to fight, obviously with adrenaline coursing through their bodies, but with nothing to fight against. They were confused, and they'd survived a non-attack. How weird is that?
Very.
So it was an attack, but not not physical as in anything.
Well, nothing physically happened, did it?
No, but they all heard it. Even Marines that were sleeping heard it and jumped up thinking they were under attack.
So, but they've all psychologically gone through the trauma
The exact
of
same.
what it would have been if physical attack would have happened.
Yeah.
So this, whatever this thing is,
That's their last night as well on Op Rock.
Is psychologically torturing.
Was it? It could be a memory. It could be a memory.
Flashbacks. But they're all having it.
Because don't they say that tragic and traumatic events to, like a scar into time, could have been a scar in time repeating itself.
Yeah, it could
have been like you say. It could have been a deliberate spiritual attack.
Yeah, but like I say, it could have been a rift in time.
Could have been aliens.
It could have been aliens. Could have been a rift in time where they're hearing what's going on.
That's what I mean.
What has gone on, but obviously it's just it could, and that's the fascinating thing with it all. This could be so many. It's like I say, for me, I just find them areas of the world so interesting because of ancient history that we do know of, and even then you're taking it what you will. But how much, even Europe itself, it's a battleground. How much history do we not know of?
But
that
even
gets destroyed?
If you look at Egypt and people who have taken things from
tombs, from the pyramids,
they don't get good luck from it. You just don't mess with.
But stuff like that. Obviously, this is something different. But what I mean is, like, when war comes, destruction is like the main goal in some aspect, because they're not, because like all that we're losing knowledge as a civilization of people. Yeah. Like, and it's like they don't want us to have it. But it's like, but like I say, but like this, and that will go back with like this outpost, this base. Like, there's knowledge underneath that base that no one's aware of. Yeah. And it's what's gone on, who died, like what was there, because they've covered it up, haven't they? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And that everything just gets buried, doesn't it? Well, yeah. So it's I would be like, I'd be on pins if I was somewhere. I wouldn't
be happy about it.
No, because especially the way we think about things.
I would be petrified.
But you'd be also very curious to find out what it is as well.
Well, yeah, but these men were petrified.
And this all happened within the last. Well, that was the last night.
That was their last night, yeah.
So from when it first started to the last night, how long was that?
So there's all different
it'll be
sources. So one source said it was 6 weeks. Another source I found was 30 days. Sources differ, so I couldn't actually find a definite time. But there were sources that said a minimum of like several weeks to several months, like, was an average of when the soldiers rotated. Okay. But yeah, I tried to find it because I was curious. But no, I couldn't find how long they were actually there. But it was long enough for one soldier he asked to be removed, and he was, and then the rest of them carried on. So I don't know.
Why he said he wanted to move. Wonder what gave him the, because what do they call it? Because
well, another thing was,
because if he'd been removed, what do they call it in the military when
discharge,
you get
discharge?
Yeah, but what do they call it?
I don't know.
It's going to annoy me now.
Yeah, because I've read that somewhere as well. But again, I didn't put it in because there wasn't anything that confirmed exactly why. So I didn't want to put that in and it be false information about this soldier.
Is it called AWOL or something like that?
No, that's when you go missing. That's when you just go. So the time at OP Rock had finally come to an end, and they were all relieved from the duty. Members of the squad have stood by their accounts. None of them claimed to understand what it was that they experienced, only that it was something unexplainable. Other reports have involved other British and American troops describing unexplained lights, whispers, radio interference, drastic changes in temperatures, shadowy figures, and a constant feeling of being watched, all of which coincides with the accounts told in this podcast by these Marines. Despite contemporary reporting, TV coverage, and years of discussion, no definitive explanation has ever emerged. So, we're exhausted Marines who were living under unimaginable stress, experiencing the effects of combat, sleep deprivation, fear, and isolation. They had been serving in extreme conditions where temperatures could reach 38 degrees. They'd worked in exhausting guard rotations. The outpost was regularly exposed to genuine Taliban gunfire and RPGs, and this could affect how people interpret sounds, shadows, and movement. You could argue that there's also a possibility of expectation, because with the location having such a reputation from previous troops, new troops in the area could already connect these experiences to every sight and sound because of what they'd already heard. And a psychiatrist who was actually interviewed on the topic about OP Rock did suggest that isolation, trauma, and psychological priming could have potentially contributed to the wider belief surrounding the position, but he did, however, stress that it couldn't diagnose the individuals involved without examining them. The Marines themselves did not believe exhaustion accounted for everything that they experienced and reported. It didn't feel like a sufficient enough explanation for the constant whispers, sensations of breath, figures seen through their equipment, because don't forget, they could see it through some equipment and not others. And it also didn't explain the failing radio batteries or for the apparent attack on their final night. Others will also argue the point that these were trained Marines, like I said before, whose survival depended on recognising genuine threats. But this, like we said, doesn't mean, though, that military training can make an individual immune to fatigue, stress, or mistakes.
You'd understand if it was one soldier that was going through all this.
Yeah, but
and
of them.
all them factors that you just mentioned, it's valid. But when they're all going through it,
and it isn't just all of them in that one team; it's other troops before them.
That experience,
yeah, all the same things. Breath,
but it'll be haunted.
Cold. Yeah.
You know, and that's like we were just going about. There's a lot of history there, whether it's modern history, ancient history.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're encountering.
I have finished it off. I put, perhaps each event had a rational explanation. Perhaps stories from one group influenced the expectations of the next. Or perhaps generations of violence and death had left something behind on that hill, which is what we believe, I think. Yeah. Do you believe that as well?
Oh, yeah.
OP Rock still exists in military folklore, and to this day, what really happened there remains unexplained and disputed. But for the Marines who served on that isolated outpost, one thing appears to be certain, and that is that what they experienced felt completely real. I think.
And this is another one, because I'd be quite intrigued. I bet there's more to this than what you think, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And I reckon if you go back, which I'm going to look into it, to be honest, but there'll be quite some interesting information on what's gone on around the area.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And it will probably paint more of a picture.
If you think so much violence, so much pain, so much destruction, it's got to leave something residual behind, and I think something was either toying with them or they were experiencing a ripping time or a scar from.
Well, that's it. But but you look at the Persian Empire, how vast their armies were when they tried fighting the Greeks and stuff. Like most of the parts of the world is a battleground.
Yeah.
Like as far as we're aware, there's thousands of years us men and women have been alive.
Yeah.
There's like look at Europe. It's literally the whole of Europe is a battleground, and it has been for thousands of years.
Well, there's a hotel.
What was there before?
There's a hotel
I don't know.
in England, and it was built on top of battleground, and people to this day still see the waist from the waist up.
Yeah. Soldiers
marching, and then they just disappear like they were never there. It's almost like something's on replay.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It'll be interesting. I'll definitely. Because it's funny how, obviously, take away Europe now because it's all, you know, down to the EU continent and the political structure. Like the Middle East, it's funny how ancient civilizations and all the way through, but and even to this day, there's still conflicts going on. Do you know what I mean? So there's been, because what people have to understand is like Iraq, Afghanistan now, Iran. They're all, even after the Mesopotamia and the Persian, it's been run by tribes.
Yeah.
And many tribes, and there's always been conflicts between the tribes.
Yeah.
So even without any Western intervention, there's been internal conflicts with each of them countries. So what's also gone on that we don't know about that's in their cultures, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So because we're only taught what we're taught.
Because a lot of the Appalachia, again, that's down to.
I would like to do I think that'd be an interesting one, because like you told me, like a lot of the Appalachian Mountains is underneath the water now. From connecting from obviously the Americas to Scotland. So
there's tons of spooky stuff on that.
What's there again? Like how crazy is that? What's under the water
that's
there
carrying
that we're not allowed to see? We'll never know because of the rising sea level in that area of the world. You know, so it's interesting. Everything's such a mystery. It's so fascinating.
But what with this that I find interesting, if this was like your paranormal ghost chaser experience, you'd think, but because these were all the military men, they're trained to be in stressful situations, they're trained to be in isolated areas, and they all experience the same thing. They all experience something that people before them had experienced. I think it's truly terrifying.
It's not for me. That gives the alarm on that is, even if just one of them recorded it, the fact of where it is.
Yeah. And the history behind it, yeah, of course.
And vast history that we're not aware of. That even if I didn't hear that, that's just made it 10 times worse.
And it is a burial ground, don't forget, as well, because of all the bones they've found.
Yeah,
and
well,
I think it was Corporal Lena that even said it was getting impossible to dig anywhere without finding bones. So they were disrupting that at the very least.
You know, what was it? But that's. So the thing with me that makes it more of that was like spiritual warfare and a spiritual battle or a rift in time or whatever it was, that to me is definitely down to the land and its history, in my opinion.
Definitely.
And what it's gone through. And that's why I'm probably going to look into that area a little bit and see
I'm glad I
because that's it. Because even if I was one of them soldiers there and I found all them, the way my mind works,
you'd want to know.
I'd want to know what this is.
Or even if
what
you knew,
was it?
I mean, I don't know what the time scale between them finding out that they're going somewhere and then them actually. But if you had enough time, you'd research in it.
But how interesting, right? Just look, like say, the Soviet Union were there in the 70s and 80s. The US and the UK are in the same spot they was in. Why is it Why is it the same?
Dragged to the.
So who was there before? You know, why is everyone drawn to that point?
Yeah.
You know, do they know something? And it's purposely. Outpost is purposely put there because.
But the strange lights.
Because I'm not being sorry to interrupt you there, but you go on the maps quickly. Anybody, even anyone who's listening, or even yourself now, like Helmand's a vast. Why that part? Why that spot? Why that spot? They're like these. They don't just pick up camp wherever. They don't just pick an outpost wherever. And I get. But why not 100 metres the other way?
Yeah.
Like, by the sounds of it, they're directly on top.
On top of it, yeah.
You know, so I find that very strange as well.
Yeah. Well, if you've enjoyed this episode, please give us a like and a subscribe. If you have any stories of your own or a topic you'd like us to cover, please email us. The email is in the description. And for now, stay curious.
Yes, and if I do find anything, we will have a part 2.
It will be interesting if you can, but yeah, I found that spooky. Do you know, I found it that spooky that I was jumping when
well, you would.
One of the dogs was moving.
The thing for me that would be spooky is the fact that you are literally in the middle of nowhere and you've got no help, you've got no nothing. You are the help.
With the radios,
you are the help.
Whatever it was cutting the radios off from them. Even the batteries. It's not even like something was interfering with the signal.
Yeah,
it's your batteries.
So it's affecting the frequency and all sorts, isn't it?
Actually, a lot of paranormal investigators, when they go to super haunted places, they say the cameras, the batteries, the phones, everything dies really
frequency,
quickly.
Innit?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the.
So yeah.
Honestly, it's so interesting. But
I'm glad you enjoyed that one.
Yeah, it's been a good one. So thank you.
Thank you.